It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate all of you being here tonight. So tonight I'll be teaching and I'll be talking about how to place your first tenant. And so I placed my first tenant long distance. So I live in California. I invest in Ohio. And I recently completed my first tenant placement. The tenants moved in as a family. It's a family. They moved in the beginning of September. And so, as you can imagine, it was like a whole process getting to that point. And so today I have some slides prepared, but for those of you who have been with me before in a session, I like to keep it conversational. I have some slides as guidelines and to remind me to talk about certain things. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to talk about what I'm presenting, but also share like what actually happened with me. And feel free to jump in if you have questions during. You can type them in the chat. You can use the raise hand icon, however you see fit to ask questions during. And then, of course, at the end, we'll have time for questions too. And then this will also be uploaded to Kajabi in the next couple of days if you'd like to replay it at your leisure. So let's get into it. So the first thing that you're probably wondering when you're placing a tenant, and again, this is for someone who is self-managing. Typically, what we're going to go through today, for the most part, if you have a property manager, they'll go through all of this. But I would say it's like a best practice to know some of these things, even if you have a property manager, so you know what they're doing. So the first thing you're probably wondering is like, all right, well, I have a property in St. Louis or in Texas or wherever it's at. How do I know what to charge for rent? And so for the way I like to look at it is there's a couple of guidelines of how to do that. And it's actually pretty simple. So I'd say the first thing is you want to look at the rents in places in your area for similar properties. So for example, I have a 3-bed, 2-bath. What I did was I looked at 3-bed, 2-baths in the area, similar square footage, similar updates. I honestly use Rental Meter. And for those who are not familiar with Rental Meter, I'll pop out of this and we'll go into Rental Meter really quick just to show you how it works. But Rental Meter basically will let you know like, hey, your rent is too high for this zip code, or hey, your rent is too low for this zip code, or your rent is just, it'll let you know where the rent you want to charge is compared to like the average in the area. But I wouldn't stop at Rental Meter, to be honest with you. I would look at places like Zillow, Redfin, and just look at rental listings. Put the zip code in, homes for rent, and you'll be able to see roughly like what the rent is, what the market rent is that you'll be able to charge for your property. And so with me, the way it worked out is the tenant who was there before was paying $900 a month plus $50 in pet rent. And something kind of weird happened in the market in Dayton, where the property values were just increasing quite a bit. And along with that, the rental rates increased quite a bit. And so, the rental, basically I was able to charge like $1,400 for rent. And the reason that I realized that is because I did research and I discovered there was a property not even less than a mile away from me, a little more updated, that was charging $1,400. And I tried to look for it the next week. It was gone. What does that say? It got rented. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of like what I can charge. And initially I wasn't planning to do any updates to the property. So I was like, maybe I'll charge like $1,200 since it's not as updated. And pretty much what happened is we discovered that we had to rip up all the carpet, and I decided to put in vinyl plank flooring because unfortunately the tenant had a dog, allowed the dog to urinate inside the property. And even though the carpets were cleaned by the tenant before they left, it was to no avail because of the scent of urine. And so the thing is, the vinyl plank, it made it look better. It made it look more modern. And so I'm like, you know what? It's going to take some time to do the rehab, but it'll allow me to charge at the top of the market. So again, Rental Meter is a great resource. And also just looking on different places, like anywhere you would look for an apartment or a home to rent, you can look in those places for your market, and it'll show you what you can charge. So I'm going to go into rental meter really quick, just in case some of you may not be familiar with rental meter. So let's enter an address. Let's enter an address. Let's say.
Are you looking for a community of like-minded individuals and access to experts in real estate?
Yeah.
Are you interested in real estate but need more support and guidance?
You know who it is?
The Black Real Estate Dialogue presents the Real Estate Investing Community. No matter how much or how little real estate experience you have, we've created a community for you because your perspective is important. All right, tell me, where's the #1 place where you can do Q&A with experienced guest speakers 2 times per month? How about unlimited access to past guest speakers' recordings? What about a private Slack channel to engage in daily discussion with everybody in the community to share resources and support each other? Head on over to blackrealestatedialogue.com. That's blackrealestatedialogue.com. It's the real estate investing community presented by the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Come join us today.
So I put in 1,200. It said your rent may be too high. So the average rent in the area is $975. The median is $925. 25th percentile $837. 75th is about $1,100. And it said, unless your rental is in better condition and has more amenities than most. That's an important caveat. And you also are able to do this like a few times. I'm not sure how many times you can do this for free. But again, I wouldn't limit yourself to rental meter. I recommend looking at actual live listings and seeing what people are charging for similar properties. But again, rental meter is a good resource. It's good kind of a benchmark to just get started and seeing what the comparable rents are. So we'll get back to the presentation. Again, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat, and feel free, and I can answer those along the way. You don't necessarily have to wait until the end. All right, moving on. So you're probably also wondering, and something that's very important is like, where should you advertise your listing? You can advertise it in a number of places, and like dozens of places. There's so many, but today I'm just going to talk about what I used. So I used a couple things. So I used Facebook Marketplace. I used Craigslist, and I also used apartments.com. So apartments.com is also what I use for my tenant management. So the tenants have a profile on there, they pay on there. And so I believe when you put it on apartments.com, it puts it out to like the Redfins, the Zillows, like your listing will show up on there too, and it's free. And so apartments.com, definitely recommend it if you're looking for something that's no cost. I believe the fee for tenants is $29 for the background check, but there's no fee for the landlord. Of course, it doesn't have like some of the fancy things that other paid resources have, but if you're on a budget and you're trying to save some money, definitely recommend apartments.com. It gets the job done. And then Facebook Marketplace, in the next slide, I'm going to show you kind of what the listing looked like on Facebook Marketplace. But Facebook Marketplace, I think, is great. And I really enjoyed Facebook Marketplace because I was able to talk to people directly, like, through Messenger. I mean, I got hundreds of messages over the few months I was looking for a tenant and kind of rehabbing the property. So just having different conversations with people, it was very easy to do. With apartments.com, people replied and you got emails. So, it can be a lot kind of managing all the communication with all these people, many who are not serious. So, we'll definitely talk about that. But yeah, I posted on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist as well. Craigslist was okay. But I say Facebook Marketplace, I'm pretty sure the tenant I got came from Facebook Marketplace. Ariel, go for it.
Yeah, I see that you mentioned using Facebook, and I know Facebook is tied, I'm sure to your profile. So do you let your tenants know that you are the owner? Because I know some people don't do that. They like try to separate it, even though they are, but they kind of just say, oh yeah, I'm just managing it or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for Facebook Marketplace, yes, because unfortunately, yes, on Facebook Marketplace, and I'll I'll go into it. I'm really glad you asked that. What I ran into on Facebook Marketplace, obviously people can see your profile, they can see where you live and all that stuff, right? And
Right.
one thing I ran into, one thing I wish I did was just created like a separate profile. Whatever, could say my name, fine. But obviously like your Facebook has like a lot of stuff, right? And so, people will ask me like, hey, like, do you live in the city? Like people ask like weird stuff. So for me, it was like, people could see my name and all that stuff. It was what it was. However, if I could do it again, I would create just a separate blank profile or something. Maybe people would thought that was scammy. I don't know. But yeah, to answer your question, people were able to know who I was. And then generally speaking, I talk directly to the tenant. So for example, the tenants I have now, they emailed me. Something else I wish I did was create a separate email because I don't like managing like a bunch of different stuff. So I have those things come through my personal email, which I kind of regret because it kind of, there's not that shield, if you will. So what I recommend is creating like just a real estate specific email. Obviously, another thing is my properties in my personal name. So there's not like a LLC they're paying or anything in between that. So they have my name on the lease, which is fine. But if I could do it again, I would do it on a separate email and create a different Facebook profile just so they don't have like my personal Facebook profile. But yeah, some people operate differently. Some people don't disclose that information, but it's kind of hard for me because I don't live there. So a lot of tenants are used to being face to face with their landlord, receiving the keys in person. And, I know people who invest out of state who kind of have other people do things on their behalf and they don't necessarily like they've been able to like evade tenants knowing they don't live there or knowing too much about them. But these tenants who I placed, they found out everything about me. Like they're like, oh yeah, I heard your podcast and all this stuff. And it's just kind of awkward to be honest with you. But they weren't tripping about it. But yeah, that's an excellent question. I guess the answer is like people kind of do it differently. So I would say, whatever you're comfortable with when you get to that stage, if you are self-managing, I would just go with that. Like whatever makes you most comfortable. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, great question. Moving along.
It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in.
Hi everyone, Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button and to visit us at blackrealestatedialogue.com.